So Democrats want gun manufacturers and gun stores to be held liable because of the acts of criminals. So let's talk about this. But real quick, before we jump into this video, if you think that we should actually hold criminals accountable for their criminal activity and not gun manufacturers and gun stores, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. I also want to thank one of the main sponsors of the channel, and that is USCCA. Through your membership with them, you get training, education, and self-defense liability protection. So if you carry a firearm, I highly recommend you look into a company like USCCA. They are who I recommend, and I'll put a link to them down in the details section. So two pieces of anti-gun legislation have been introduced, one being in the House, one being in the Senate. They are HR 2814 and S 1338. HR 2814 has been introduced by Representative Adam Schiff out of California, and the other has been introduced by Richard Blumenthal out of Connecticut. Now, what do these two bills do? These two bills seek to do something that Biden has actually called for heavily recently, and that is to target manufacturers and gun stores and hold them liable for the acts of criminals. You may remember very recently Biden came out and had a whole speech talking about the major things that he would like to achieve as far as gun control. And then he went on this rant about how if God came down and asked him, Joe, if you could have one thing out of all the things that you want as far as gun control, what would you pick? And he said the one thing he would pick is to hold manufacturers and gun stores liable for criminal activity. And that's exactly what these two proposed bills seek to do. And it is to remove the liability protection that gun stores, gun manufacturers actually have right now. And that is through the PLCAA, which is the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act. And so what exactly is that? Well, the PLCAA was passed in 2005 by Congress, and the PLCAA provides immunity protection for gun manufacturers, dealers, and gun stores. These individuals in the gun industry will not be held liable for the acts of criminals because of criminal activity. They will be immune because there's no way that they could have foreseen that someone is going to take their product and then go engage in just blatant criminal activity. How could we hold them liable for something like that? So the PLCAA provides them liability protection and immunity in those situations. However, the PLCAA does not protect them from liability from other things like pure negligence, defects in their products, and it also does not protect them from liability when they actually know that someone is going to engage in criminal activity with their products and they still sell it to them anyways. Gun manufacturers, gun stores are still held liable for those things, just like every other manufacturer and company in other industries is as well. And so what these two proposed bills seek to do is to revoke this immunity and protection from a liability that gun manufacturers and gun stores have, and actually open them up to being sued by individuals who maybe are victims to someone else's criminal activity. And this is mirrored in these statements by the two individuals that are proposing these bills, and I'll read them for you right here. Here are some statements. This comes from Representative Schiff. This bill would pierce the gun industry's liability shield by putting an end to the special protections the gun industry receives when they shirk their fundamental responsibility to act with responsible care for the public safety. Victims of gun violence deserve their day in court. Now, this comment comes from Senator Murphy. What he states is, we cannot keep giving the gun industry license to kill. By making them immune to lawsuits, we are essentially putting their interests ahead of our community's safety. That is just wrong. It is time to let the gun lobby know that they no longer own Congress the way they used to, and they won't be held to a special standard any longer. So some of the things you heard there in these statements, again, it's a pure attack on the gun industry, and also it's seeking to open up gun manufacturers, gun stores, all these individuals within the gun industry, open them up to being sued by victims of actual criminal activity. Now, when you look at the text of these bills, they're pretty simple. All it does is revoke the PLCAA. That's what it says. The language is just going to revoke it. In HR 2814, they're calling it the Equal Access to Justice for Victims of Gun Violence Act. And again, the text of that really just revokes the PLCAA. Now, this is something that Biden has said that he is heavily in favor of and wanted Congress to do. And he said if he could have one thing, it would be this. And so now you have these two proposed bills actually hitting the House and Senate. And why is it that above all of these other things that he had proposed, like magazine bans, so-called assault weapons bans, things like that, why above all else would he want this? Well, because this is a kind of backwards way to actually shut down the gun industry. What the first thing that these two proposed bills does, which is pretty obvious, and I'm sure a lot of you guys see through this, is it's shifting the actual responsibility from the criminal who's engaging in the criminal conduct and then placing that blame on gun manufacturers, gun stores, and other people in the gun industry, which it isn't their fault. criminals are engaging in criminal activity, but they're going to try to hold these manufacturers, dealers, gun stores accountable for those. Again, this is nothing new. This happens all the time. What they do is they shift the blame from this criminal and then say, hey, we need to ban all these other things because a criminal engaged in this conduct. Therefore, we need to infringe on all law-abiding citizens' rights. It happens all the time, and this is just another way that they're trying to do that. Beyond that, this is a backdoor way to attack the actual full gun industry. Now, anytime that something happens, these people in the gun industry and these companies in the gun industry are going to be open to heavy litigation by victims, by other organizations. They're just going to be open to a slew of lawsuits. And the downstream effect of that is one, that they're going to have to actually litigate this stuff. It's super costly. And if they do happen to lose, because who knows where these lawsuits will be brought up, without the protection of the PLCAA, a lot of these judges might rule against these gun industries, then they're going to have to pay out a ton of money. And a lot of these smaller manufacturers, dealers, gun stores might have to close their doors. And maybe even some of these larger ones, if they get sued enough, will also have to shut down their doors as well, which downstream affects us, the law-abiding individuals, because if you have manufacturers and ammunition manufacturers and device manufacturers having to close their doors, then we don't have as many things available to us to exercise our Second Amendment rights here in the US. So as you can see, these two proposed bills are just simply not about safety, and they're not about the victims of these so-called gun violence and crimes. What this really is it's just pure and simple an attack on the gun industry. Now, as of right now, one of these proposed bills already has 33 co-sponsors. Again, it's been something that Biden has called for heavily, so it's probably gonna get a lot of traction behind it as well. We'll see where this goes, but one of the things I'm going to call you guys to do is to contact your representatives, let them know that you do not agree with repealing the PLCAA, that gun manufacturers, the gun industry, gun stores should not be held liable because of someone else's criminal activity. If a criminal is going to engage in criminal activity, we should hold that individual responsible, not a manufacturer who had no idea or concept that this random individual was going to lose their mind and do something that is just purely criminal. Also want to mention that next week, May 8th and May 9th, the Armed in May event is going to happen where you can come out, meet me as well as Reno May. It's going to be held at Route 66 Shooting Sports Park in San Bernardino. I'll put links to all this down in the details section. Come out, you can come shoot some guns, meet me as well as Reno May. There's gonna be tons of vendors out there. We're gonna have tons of giveaways. There's gonna be food, all that stuff. It should be a really good time. I'm really excited to meet all of you guys. Again, May 8th and May 9th, and I'll put a link to all of this down in the details section. So if you guys have any questions, go ahead and comment down below and I'll try to answer the best of my ability. Also, if you guys like this video and you like support the channel, one of the best ways to do that is to like, comment, subscribe, and make sure you hit that notification bell because that helps the channel analytics, helps us spread the word about the Second Amendment, also spread the word about 2A news like this that is going on in the US to infringe on our Second Amendment rights. So as always, thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And never forget, this nation was built by armed scholars, and this nation will be maintained by armed scholars.